Hello and welcome to the Cloud Campaign Mastery Series. This is the place where we talk about how to get the most out of Cloud Campaign's feature sets. Today, I am joined by Luke Denby, one of our customer success managers.
Yep.
And we're going to chat about how to use categories to organize content and create robust automated social media campaigns. Luke, welcome. Do you want to give us a quick overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, as mentioned, I'm a customer success manager. That means I'm responsible for making sure Cloud Campaign's clients are seeing success right out of the gate. We want to make sure that they're growing, so they're seeing success using our tool, using best practices, and making sure they're getting return on the investment in this platform.
So with your job, with your responsibility, you're actually working with a lot of agencies directly. You're involved with them, you're involved in their business, you kind of see what their struggles are and work to help them work through those challenges.
Correct. There's a lot of cases where I want to be able to provide insight that since I've been working with so many different agencies, and there's a lot of cases where our clients have only been working with their colleagues, or maybe they're just starting out and they don't know some of those trials and tribulations that they can get in front of. And so I want to make sure they're avoiding some of those trip ups and using, again, agency tools like Cloud Campaign to the best abilities.
And would it be safe to say that you've worked with a range of agencies from just brand new starting out to maybe like mid-sized to larger agencies?
Because I primarily these days focus on some of the largest agencies, but there's been a large number of accounts that start small and then using some of these best practices that we're going to be talking about today have grown into very large successful agencies.
Well, that is a great segue because today we're going to talk about some of the foundational best practices that any agency can use to manage their content library within Cloud Campaign. So we're going to talk about categories and we're going to start with just the basics. We're not going to linger here too long, but Luke, do you want to give us just a quick breakdown of what are categories within Cloud Campaign?
Categories are basically a way to organize all of the content that you're creating in Cloud Campaign. So through using our platform, you're going to be creating a lot of posts that are going out to social platforms. And the goal is to have a large number of content. You don't want to just have one piece of content over and over. So how do you keep that all organized? That's with categories. Essentially, it's an easy way to keep that information organized, as well as then using different workflows, as well as report on against those categories.
Okay. Yeah. You hit on something that's, I think, rings true for a lot of agencies and social media managers is that the sheer volume of content needed for social media it quickly gets unwieldy. So you need a way to contain this information. Otherwise, it will just get away from you. What it sounds like, categories are like an organization system. And it seems like it's a blank slate starting with nothing. So we're going to teach you some different ways to set it up to serve your business instead of being in the junk drawer. You don't want a social media junk drawer. We're going to avoid that. So can you show us really quickly how to access categories if I wanted to, if I was starting fresh or trying to manage some, where they live in the platform and how to access and edit
them? Here I'm in my test instance of Cloud Campaign and I'm within the content library. And as you can see, I have a large number of items already created. And also you'll notice right here are all the existing category tags that I have already created. You can also then see the little color markers showing you which categories at a glance each piece of content sits within. And this is a really easy way to, as mentioned, keep this all organized. Instead of having to scroll through things or looking for like, oh yeah, what did I do it by caption counts, times posted, etc. Categories is just an easy way to then just click into one of these. And then you can see like, oh, here's all of my Monday motivation posts. And creating new ones is just as simple as clicking add/manage. And I can create a new category. This is my webinar posts. And let's do a nice gray. You can always customize it because again, as you're doing multiple categories, maybe you want to have them organized not only by name, but also similar colors. And then I can see that I've now added in my new webinar post category.
Nice, simple. Thank you for teaching us how to do that. Let's talk then a little bit, now that we know where they are, how to manage them, can we talk a little bit about actually like structuring? How do we control some of this madness of the that can be the content library?
The first thing is you want to go in with a plan. And so like, how are you going to be organizing your content? Is it based off of a certain type of content? Is it a specific campaign you're running for a different agency? Or maybe even like different holidays or themes? And so once you have that in place, you'll notice I have a couple examples where I have first Tuesdays and second Tuesday posts, 2 different travel sections, blog posts, consulting, as well as like, oh, October, July. You can have multiple categories on the same piece of content. So you could also then have a situation where you have a plan for a July campaign around Monday motivation, and then keep that all organized. So once you have that plan, you then, it's as simple as when you're creating a piece of content, this can be my webinar post. Let's just add a quick little image, beautiful little wall, caption, webinar time, and then categories. From here, you can choose from any of your existing categories, or just like we showed previously, create a new category. But since I already created that little webinar post one, I can click it in here. I can see it's now added. I can then wrap it up with choosing my social platforms, saving the content. And let me turn off that option. So I can here see my new post, webinar post. You see that little gray banner showing it's a webinar post category as well.
Nice. So there's another place you can create it too, like when you're in the moment, oh, I needed to categorize this, but you don't have to go back and do anything. You can actually do it in your content creation process.
Yeah, and if
That's
you also
really cool.
forget something, so say for example, this summer sale, it's like, oh, I forgot, this should also be in the webinar section. I can always go in, edit the content, go to categories, and add that additional category or remove categories as needed. You can use multiple different categories to keep stuff organized. So from a click, you can scale it down from a full library to just a subset of that specific content. But then that feeds into numerous other features that we can dive into deeper, such as making it easier to select content for approvals, for schedules, for reporting against. Another nice thing that you can also then do is, again, as I clicked into different categories, you can add those into the different views. So I have multiple different categories selected, and it's pulling up so I can easily see, again, off of the little banners, the different groups that these sit within.
It's also nice. You can see a visual representation of how many groups that a piece of content might span, which I think plays into when we start setting up automation campaigns. It gives you kind of a visual representation of where your content's going to be going. Speaking of that, we talked about like setting a plan beforehand. One of the things I like to do is write things down ahead of time, especially if I'm coming into a clean, empty workspace, that new workspace smell. You have to build your own structure. That's going to be different depending on your agency, like portfolio, whatever it is that you're doing, what that actually looks like. But there are some things that you can do, like Luke said, using campaigns or some of these themes to structure. One of the things I like to do just to keep my workspaces tidy is use a numerical system, because the way the platform will display is first numerically, then alphabetically. And you can also use emojis as well. But this allows you to organize the categories themselves. So we're talking about organizing the content, but I also encourage folks to organize their category space, because if you have too many categories, it also becomes overwhelming, just like too much content is overwhelming. So I also like to advocate for a nice, tidy organization structure ahead of time, whether it's a Google Doc or a spreadsheet or something, to kind of determine which categories you might need and how they play into your overall marketing strategy or your client's marketing strategy.
Because I also see multiple cases where it's not just one person running this categories and scheduling. There'll be many hands, again, cooks in the kitchen working on this. So we want to make sure everyone's aware that, like, oh, we're using this category for these specific types of content. And that way, again, you're not just keeping yourself organized, but your entire team.
It can, if you don't have a procedure in place, if your agency is of that size, it can quickly get out of hand. Sometimes people will just create things ad hoc, and that's when we see these workspaces really balloon. Thankfully, a little spoiler alert teaser, we are coming up with some new advanced user permissions in the future, which I believe will allow you to even have finer control of who can create things like categories, which should help agencies and managers manage that a little bit better. All right, Luke's going to create another numerical category and an emoji category, so we can just illustrate how the category tags are listed. If you're on Windows, you can press the Windows and period to bring up an emoji keyboard. And if you're on Mac, you can press Control Command Space and click to open the emoji menu.
And here we can see I've now created two. Organize your thumbs up. We have all the ones first, then the twos, then again A's, B's, and alphabetically from there.
Cool. So when you are managing your categories, you can use the hierarchical structure when you're actually managing the overall categories in mass. From ascending order, it'll be numbers, letters, and then emojis. Emojis are I actually really like to use emojis in categories because it's a great way to kind of visually represent things. When you have a lot of categories, scanning them, all the words and phrases that might be used to tag them can just, they all bleed together. But if you look for specific emojis, I found that that's a pretty, it's a good heuristic, a good shortcut to get to what I'm looking for a little easier. So Luke, I'm curious, in terms of the grouping and management organization of the category tags themselves, what have you seen from your customers? How do they organize their libraries, these other agencies?
Because the main thing to be aware of is what are the main themes you're using for your posts. And so we'll see a lot of cases where they'll have, again, they're doing certain content on a certain day. So Monday motivation or hump day posts that are always going to be going out Wednesday, because you're often going to be using the same category tags as you might be for a specific campaign. And so if you have a campaign where this is our summer sales event, that's the same type of category you might want to use for the naming consistency. So that way it's not just a unique thing you're creating, but something that's going to be consistent throughout the whole workflow. Another thing that I've seen a lot of success with, as you mentioned, is that numbering options, because there'll be cases where this might be working for right now in 2023, but come next year, they might want to revisit it, change things. And so having, again, dates, numbers associated with those, so you can come back to posts, edit them, maybe reuse certain content or look back at different content using those different category names. Again, instead of having to scroll through a massive library of resources.
So that actually sparks a thought. Let's say I've got my categories set up. We've jumped the gun on the webinar a little bit, and I'm already posting lots of content using automated schedules. After content's been posted, and it's been 6 months or a year, should I untag content?
No. No, I think it's still a good reminder to be able to look back and see what parts of campaigns, different things were used in the past. So that way, again, you're able to have a nice record to see, oh yeah, I used this as a blog post series a year ago or a month ago. Maybe this is something that I need to revisit because this is still great content, but again, I don't want to lose it to the march of time.
Yeah, and one thing I like to do is, instead of deleting it from my content library, deleting the category altogether, even if I know the category itself is obsolete, I actually will put a little Z as my number or prefix in front of the category, just to force it to go to the bottom. And Z is just my personal archive shortcut. So I can keep things kind of at the bottom where I know it's not going to be used as much. And then I like to keep things that I do use frequently, maybe a little more lifted to the top. That's just the way my little brain operates. But the great thing about categories is it's a flexible system. So you're going to work to figure out what's right for your agency. And your
maybe combine it with a fun little skull or tombstone emoji to remind you, like, oh yeah, this is a dead category for now, but we might relive in it later on.
And now that I know that emoji is forced to the bottom, I think that's the pivot for me for my content library. So I like that. Well, we've talked about some ways to we've talked about how to organize. We've talked about some of the structures and how the category tags themselves are going to be listed in your workspace, which I think is important to create. As a rule of thumb, just create as many categories as you need, but as few as possible. That's kind of my general rule. Does that ring true with the agencies you've been managing?
Because I've seen people kind of go the opposite and then regret it, where they're like, oh, categories, this is going to change our lives. And then I look a week later and they have as many pieces of categories as they do content. And that's not really organizing anything at that point. It's just a massive wall of different categories. And then we'd have to go through some of the bulk options to recategorize options and clean it up a little bit. So just like if you're going to the library or checking out a different movie option, you want to be able to quickly see areas in big, broad topics instead of getting so specific that, again, you're having way too many topics that you can't, again, filter through in a meaningful way.
What can you give like an average like per workspace, what you've seen?
I'd say on average, depending on the size of the agency, a minimum I would want to see is around 5, but on average, more around like 10 or 12 is kind of the baseline. It can sometimes get a little bit more if people are doing really specific types of campaigns, as well as they're then having some of those retired categories as well. But as far as those active ones, 10 or 12 is a nice, good base number that I've seen.
Yeah. And again, like every agency is going to be operating differently, but I think if you stick to that, as many as you actually need, but as few as possible, I think that's really the best kind of pruning tool I can give you. Well, let's talk about some of the campaign planning best practices, because I think that feeds into like one of the questions I ask myself is, do I need to create a category for this, or do I have an existing category? It's kind of like one of my checklists when managing content in Cloud Campaign. Can you talk about the relationship of categories to scheduling and posting?
Yeah, a lot of people are maybe just doing a one-off post, but people that are seeing the most success and also saving the most time are using our scheduling system in conjunction with categories. So as you can see, I have a couple of Work Wednesday recipes, Monday motivation schedules already created. So what you're able to do by combining schedules and categories is, instead of doing those one-off schedulings, you can assign something to a category, assign it to a schedule, and then you're automatically having that populated to a certain date and time on your calendar moving forward. And it's a really simple process. So let's just go ahead and create a new schedule. I'm going to do a weekly schedule. And since we're using that webinar post as our category, I'm just going to mirror it here. Let's say,
yeah, can we do webinar Wednesday? Because I love alliteration.
So yeah, we'll do Wednesdays at 11. You can also add additional dates, times, but for now, Wednesdays at 11, creating the schedule. And then you'll notice the first option is auto-filling the queue using a category. And so I can just easily go select that category that I had created. You can also do multiple categories. So if you're like, oh, this is my Work Wednesday ones, you can combine those in together, save the settings, and then I can easily see I now have Webinar Wednesdays as a queue. That sample post I created, again, I can tell by that little gray bar, and now it's automatically going to be scheduled on my calendar. So if I jump over, I can see that coming up next Wednesday, here's my webinar post scheduled and ready to go. And if I had 50 pieces of content already in that category, it would then automatically add those 50 pieces to the same queue. Or if I move forward and create another piece of content, use that category, it again will automatically be added into that queue all at once. So it's again a really easy way to keep the stuff you create organized in a set schedule. So instead of having to manually schedule 50 pieces, you can say, oh, this is my repeating schedule. Let's do it all at one go.
So the way I've kind of thought about them is just like hoppers or buckets, and the buckets have holes in them, and you're punching in whatever size holes you want in terms of, Wednesdays at 11 or Tuesdays at 4 p.m. And then within Cloud Campaign, if your bucket is category webinars, anything you tag as webinar is just going to pop into that bucket and fall, drip out when it's supposed to. That's one of the ways I kind of filter my categories. Does this need a bucket, or does it have one already, when I am trying to determine like whether or not I need to create a category or a schedule for this piece of content?
And this is also a good example of why you might want to have things tagged with multiple categories, because you might have one that's a strictly organizational category of these are my webinar posts, but then like, oh, here's also the category for my campaign that I'm running tied towards the webinar posts, or maybe just they're my, again, Work Wednesdays that are going out, or Motivation Mondays, that you can have multiple things within multiple
categories within categories. We're getting a little inception here. And also at any time too, if you're trying to set up categories for your agency and you're just like, I can't figure out, should this be a category within a category? Reach out to our team, reach out to your customer success manager. They're super excited and eager to help figure out what's going to work best for your agency and for your goals with as few tags as possible. So make sure you use our team as a resource. Don't just sit there pulling your hair out.
And we're happy to jump in and kind of be like, oh, does this category spark joy? Should we keep it or remove it? And again, clean it up for you and make sure things are working as smoothly as possible.
We do oh, that'd be a good series, Cloud Campaign remodels. We jump into your workspace and give it a little spark joy. I like that. One of the reasons we're harping on this stuff though is that we mentioned earlier the sheer amount of volume that's required to be effective on social media. So by creating these category tags, you can also create content in bulk and assign them a category at once, which helps really fill up those hoppers. Before we start creating content, before we categorize it, talk about just some of those campaign planning best practices so that we know with our categories what we're actually doing with. Can you give a little bit of direction there? Like what am I focusing on with content and how should I kind of go about?
Yeah, aspect is getting that content live onto the social platforms, as well as making sure there's enough content so that way it seems like there's activity in the agency you're supporting. Because I know when I'm looking up a company online, if I then check out their Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, and I see that they've only had one post from 2 years ago, I'm thinking to myself like, oh, what's actually going on? Is this company still in business? Am I going to do further investigation to look into this? And so being able to base it around, again, the cadence of the content you're pushing out, as well as the amount of content. So the goal would be to look at different things like, oh, am I going to be posting once a day for each different social platform? Or am I going to stagger it maybe like twice a day or every other day? Or maybe it is my goal to have unique content every Monday and then maybe recycling a couple different posts every Wednesday, Thursday. So you want to be aware of just those different dates you're shooting for, as well as the amount of content you're hoping to post out over a set course of time. I know there's a lot of agencies that then are talking to their own clients and like, depending on the level of support they're then offering different billing structures or account options to say, based off of what you're working with us, this is how much support we're going to be giving your social platform.
Nice. Okay. So it's kind of building out a little more thought around your actual agency practice of how you're going to be interfacing with your customer to kind of determine some of those other factors of like cadence and content themes and things like
Correct.
that. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of instances where, again, in most cases you want to have a lot of content out there, but you also don't want to flood it when just like you want to have that certain schedule to be able to then build also a brand like, oh, this is what I'm expected to see within this account.
Right. Because I guess like one of the reasons that I would hire an agency and not do it myself, if I'm doing it myself, I'm just like ad hoc, oh, an idea post, you know, they're one-offs. And a good social media manager or a good agency is going to take time to think, okay, well, we need to post consistently at multiple times a day with themes structured around your business and what you want to do, whether it's to grow it via, you know, your brand presence, to drive engagement, comments, shares. You know, there's a lot more thought and intention behind it. And using category tags is a way to kind of group those thematically and structure that and align that with your marketing business objectives for your client. So I wanted to make sure that we kind of talk.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of examples where it's a company that's working with a franchise, like, oh, there's multiple different locations of the same business. And so maybe at the kind of more corporate level, there's going to be a set calendar, like, all right, every Monday and Friday, corporate is going to send out specific posts that's going to be applicable to every company in the franchise. Whereas it's up to then the unique location to say, all right, on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's up to you. You need to be doing those maybe team interviews on Tuesdays and Wednesday write-ups about, again, different customer interviews. So that way, again, you can have different tiers of categories to say different teams are using those different types of content at different dates as well.
I'm glad you brought that up because like franchise management and enterprise level management, where you're maybe dealing with multiple organizations or locations across the US or globally, being able to tag those and separate those while also keeping some things consistent, I think is one of the like more powerful features of categories, even though it is a little more advanced. But I think mastering that in a way can help agencies provide a deeper level of service and be able to use that as a unique value offering. We can offer multi-franchise location social media seamless service to those multi-locations using our platform, is what you might say as an agency owner white labeling Cloud Campaign selling to a customer. Just give that one to you. Oh, I want to make a little call out too. If you are interested in managing or targeting larger businesses, we did have a couple pieces of content go up lately. One is how to manage social media at the enterprise level. Our co-founder, Ross Gray, also interviewed Carol Cruz on how to land companies like Coca-Cola, ESPN, and other Fortune 500 companies. So if you are shooting for those big whales, there's some great resources to jump in on. So getting back to the actual like creation of these categories and the
Mhm.
publishing process, you showed us how to create those schedules and how those populate, or how those buckets start to fill up. Do those get just posted right away? Is there some kind of barrier or layer in between where there's like a review
Yeah.
process for content?
Yeah,
How
so
does that work?
depending on how you've set up your specific brand workspace, you can of course enable it so that content needs to be approved first before it goes out. And so a nice thing also with the scheduling and categories is you can have 50 pieces in the schedule queue, but if they're not approved, they're not going to go out. So you can easily have it scheduled and you're just waiting for that person to give you the thumbs up saying, looks good, or tweak this caption, or maybe use a different image, and then make those adjustments. And then you don't have to go back reschedule it at a later date. You can have it all set up in advance, and then once it's approved, it'll go out. Or if you have it set up already approved, again, the schedule is going to be put into the calendar based off of the dates and times you've selected, and it'll load up directly on the calendar. If it's on the calendar also and not approved,
I
you
think
can also, it'll show up as a little yellow post upcoming as opposed to an upcoming blue post.
that's a great visual indicator of, hey, this needs attention. I think best practice too is to have posts not post without approval, or have posts need approval by default, especially if you're managing teams. It's just a nice little safety net where you can fill up those schedules and you can have things scheduled in advance. And maybe the next step is really just getting those approvals done. I think it's just a faster way to work.
Yep. Because yeah, there's also a number of different tiers where I've had some clients who are lucky enough to be like, oh, we completely trust you, but they still might want to have an internal approval system. So they're not going to the client, but they're again talking to different individuals to say, all right, I'm the person in charge of content creation, but this is the person in charge of scheduling. And oh, do we have the right social platform selected for this content or this campaign as well?
As a content creator, a second set of eyes is always good practice. So can you show us real quickly how to create an approval on content, and maybe just comment on how categories might
Yeah,
play into
so let's
that?
go ahead and create another sample post. So that way we have more things to work through. I'm just going to do again, real quick image. So we have a lucky dog for our next one.
Oh, Waffle and Woof.
And so I turn this on so it has not yet been approved. I see that it's now in my category. This little yellow mark shows it's not yet been approved. I can easily go to my approvals, create a new approval. So these are my, again, keeping consistency, webinar approvals, select the content, and now instead of having to manually choose it, I can just grab everything in that category. And I can also then override that to say, you know what, I don't need the summer sale one included, or I want all three of them added in. Or also on the left, you can add additional categories in as well. But for now, let's keep it simple with a 3. I'll select a call out like, please review by, and insert your date here. So 9/25. I've now created it.
Yeah, always good to set an expectation.
And then I can easily see at a glance also like, oh yeah, 2 of my 3 have already been approved. But when I'm sending this out, I can then see what those look like. My dog days, not yet approved. I can maybe say like, oh, let's add some hashtags to those comments, tweak things. Or once it looks good, just click on needs approval to be approved. And now it's good to go.
Nice. So it sounds like when you're, especially if you're creating large swaths of content at a time, being able to just have one click to add all of that content to your approval. In this case, we only use one post, but I imagine, and if you're scheduling a month's worth of content at a time, that would definitely save you quite a bit of
just
clicking.
like, again, if we're doing bulk operations, we want to make sure that we're doing, again, saving it is a quick measure instead of doing, again, those one-offs when possible.
And what's cool about those approvals too is you just send that link, that URL to your client or team member, and they can jump in there and leave comments, and they can approve it without actually being logged in. They can do it on their mobile phone while waiting in line for their subway, whatever. It's nice because it takes a lot of the friction out of getting those approvals, which I think in the past has always been historically challenging.
And yeah, especially now that we have it already in the schedule, I've saved my time. So that way I'm just waiting for the person to actually give me the thumbs up, approve the content. But my work is already done as far as the scheduling goes. And I'm able to make sure that I can focus my time elsewhere instead of worrying about getting it re-added to a schedule once the approval is clear.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather just be able to hand off an approval of, a week's worth or month's worth of content to a client and be able to work on
Okay.
the next batch and then make adjustments as needed instead of just doing, kind of chasing down approvals for each piece. It's better
Yep.
better for
And
everybody.
yeah, as myself, I'd much
But
rather approve multiple pieces at a time instead of getting 20 separate individual approvals and review 20 pieces separately.
yeah, nobody has time for that. But since we've gone through the approval process, we've scheduled content, it's in the queue, it's on the calendar, ready to go. It's posted. Now we need to be able to report on the efficacy of our social media content. Can you walk us through how categories play into that process?
So within our monitor section, I can jump into analytics and then category. And this is going to then show me how these categories are performing. So make sure of most used, most viewed, and most engaging. So I can easily see that, oh, I've done the first Tuesday the most, but my second Tuesday is actually getting a lot more views. Just like all the other ways, this helps you then see what's working. What do I need to reproduce? Like, why are those second Tuesday ones getting more views? Let's jump back into the categories. And then I can easily see like, oh, my second Tuesday is also my webinar category, whereas my first Tuesdays are just my resource link ones. Maybe I need to be doing more of those ones of second Tuesday, kind of recreate the stuff that's working instead of putting so much time on ones that, again, aren't getting as much traction on other ones, as well as like who's engaging with those contents.
So if you were to dive into like the second Tuesday category, the platform doesn't give you insights of like a breakdown of your content so you can make some decisions there?
So you can definitely look at the different types of content. So we can look at different insights based off of, oh, it looks like posts that have images with short captions are not getting as much traction as ones that have short captions with hashtags and a link asking a question. Those are the ones that are getting more engagement. So maybe I need to then use these different post types to then feed into the type of content I'm creating. So that way, again, using the categories is pointing me in these directions to say, this is working, this isn't working. How can I recreate something instead of starting from scratch?
Yeah. So if you want to kind of eke the most performance out of a category, you can use some of these insights to figure out, well, which types of posts are resonating the most and roll that. I would not roll it exclusively. I like to keep some diversity into your content stream, but I think splashing in some more of that will certainly help try and boost that engagement over time.
And yeah, I've seen a lot of customers, again, take this information to the clients they're working with to say like, I know you're really pushing for, I don't know, these webinars. The webinars are performing well, but not as much as this stuff that we're suggesting. And you can use this data to, again, back up any types of ideas or projects you have with customers, or maybe also to show like, hey, this thing that we suggested a month ago is working. And back it up with facts.
Yeah, data and the world of social media marketing, data really is king. Being able to back up what you're doing with tangible results. Or if something doesn't work out, being able to verify that that's the case and move on. That's not objectively a bad thing. It's a good thing. You can rule that out and make more room for productive endeavors. When we're sharing this stuff with our clients, I think this is nice for the agency or manager. But if I wanted to kind of go through this with my clients, can you walk us through what that would look like and through the lens of categories?
So of course, all this information is visible within our live platform, but through the report section, you can easily export this data. So I can just create a new report. So say again, it's my webinar posts report, choose your date range. And so ideally, in most cases, you should be having this already running instead of just creating this webinar today. Let's just do ahead September. And then you can choose, again, what specific types of options do you want to include with this report. We're talking about categories. We definitely want to have this turned on for exporting, generate the report. And from there, I can easily then view it myself, copy the link, download as a CSV or PDF, share it with my clients or internally, maybe people who don't have access to Cloud Campaign directly, and now then have all of that data in a nice tangible report that I can work with other teams for.
And what's cool about that too is it's actually clickable and interactive. It's like a responsive web page. So as Luke clicks around in there, it's neat because it's almost like a mini version of Cloud Campaign that they can engage with. and filter through. So, one application of this, if you're living in the remote world, is you share this link with your client. You're doing what we're doing right now. We're on video chat, and we can actually walk through this and talk with our clients and be able to show them, hey, these are our categories, what we posted. This is what the engagement's been looking like, and kind of have those conversations very focused around that as a campaign theme.
And again, this is then also, if you're leveraging our white labeling, this can then be produced to look like with your logo, your colors, basically make sure this is your report as opposed to something you just pulled from our site.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up our talk on categories. Luke, is there anything that you want to, any parting shots you want to leave, or any nuggets of wisdom you would want to impart on our listeners or watchers about categories?
Yeah, I'd say a big thing to note is start using them. I think the thing that pains me the most is when I'm getting a new client onboarded, things are getting started, they got their things connected to social accounts, but then I look and they haven't leveraged categories at all. It's just like, oh, like you want to start strong. But that doesn't mean like if you missed the boat and you haven't started with categories, you can't go back and use them. It's never too late to get organized, get things cleaned up. Start using them small, even if you're unsure, like just try on one category to start. And then you'll quickly see how easy it is to then just organize it with multiple categories moving forward.
Yeah, I really think that categories are not only like the structure of Cloud Campaign, but they're also the muscles too that kind of link things together, the ligaments that link a lot of the features together. And having an effectively organized library, as you said, goes through not only how your workspace is organized, but it also trickles to your posting, where you're posting to, your monitoring and reporting of it. It really impacts all aspects of the life cycle. So I think it's just laying this foundation early on will help.
I had a client who was able to basically, I'm no longer working on Mondays because of the work I'm doing with categories and scheduling, instead of having to spend so much time digging through items, manually choosing when things are going to be going out. Like, no, let's save that time, do it all up front, and make it a lot easier in the process.
Could you say that first part one more time?
So she was able to basically take Mondays off moving forward. She's like, oh, I'm saving so much time using Mondays categories off. And scheduling.
That's all I wanted to hear again. That's all I wanted to hear. Mondays off, folks, using categories. That's the crux. If you want to take Mondays off using categories, there's a great way to do that. We have a program called Cloud Certification. And it is a customized training program built for your agency to help you get the most out of the application. Luke, do you want to just quickly tell us what are the benefits? Why should folks be paying attention?
So as a customer success manager, our goal is to make sure that you're successful using our platform. And through the cloud certification process, we're ensuring that you, as well as your team, are well-versed in not only every aspect of Cloud Campaign, but everything that Cloud Campaign is touching. And so you're getting certified not only on I know how to create a category, but again, what are the benefits of those categories in those social campaigns you're doing, in those meetings you're having with clients, with your boss, to talk about, again, the different use cases that you're using Cloud Campaign for, or different social platforms for. And then you're able to say oh yeah, I'm an expert not only on this specific platform, but social media as a whole. And the nice benefit of that cloud certification is it also then opens you up to our affiliates program, which again, if you have colleagues in the space, or if you have other franchisees that you're working with, or many of our clients are also then doing reselling of access to the platform, affiliates is opening up essentially another revenue stream for you to then leverage those clients that are getting set up and referred to Cloud Campaign.
Now, if I were a customer and I went through cloud certification and I wanted to take advantage of an affiliate program, would you help? That sounds complicated. Would you help me figure out how to kind of roll that into my business as an additional revenue stream?
As a customer success manager, it's not just the Cloud Campaign platform. Again, the affiliates program options is one of the areas that we're experts in. We've helped numerous clients roll that out, and then basically seeing people who are like, oh yeah, I've referred X number of customers, and this is now just passive income that's coming in to basically boost the normal job I'm doing as well.
Cool. So take Mondays off and create passive income just by reselling the platform. That's all actually we love when people do that. That sounds awesome. It is awesome. And our team is ready to help folks make that possible. So reach out to your customer success manager, ask them about cloud certification, get started on that, get started with the affiliate program, and just completely transform your agency, create some new revenue streams, take some time off, treat yourself. Well, Luke, thank you so much for jamming with me today on categories. It was a pleasure. I was really blown away by your depth of knowledge and just how to really make the most of these. So appreciate your time today. All right, that's it for our chat today. Don't forget, you can head over to cloudcampaign.com. Try us for 2 weeks free if you're not already on the platform. And again, reach out to your customer success manager and jump on cloud certification. Thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.